What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to World According to Briggs and a fresh look at Baltimore, or Beemore, whatever you want to call it. Baltimore is home to far too much history to explain in a 10-minute video, but it is home to Fort McHenry, the birthplace of the U.S. national anthem. The Star-Spangled Banner? Yeah, happened here. A lot of people think that the Star-Spangled Banner comes from a battle during the Revolutionary War. It's incorrect. It came from the War of 1812. In 1999, there was a survey done about the United States and where things are located. 75% of US high school students thought that Baltimore was like right next to New York City. It's not. It is just north of Washington, D.C. on the Chesapeake Bay. Baltimore is one of the most dangerous cities in the United States, but they are on the verge of a tech boom, so there'll be a lot of people relocating to Baltimore in the coming years. And that's who this video is for. And because of that, we will be using the actual technical name of the neighborhood so you could find it on Google Map or whatever. Locals have all kinds of names for neighborhoods in every major city, and sometimes they have several for the same neighborhood. We won't be getting into all that, but if you really want to know what a lot of these neighborhoods are called, just look at the comment section of this video. The locals are going to be filling it with, "We don't call it that, we call it this." It happens every time. All right, let's take a look. Number 10, Greater Rosemont. Greater Rosemont, or just Rosemont, is northwest of downtown Baltimore with Gwynn Falls Park on its western border. There's almost 19,000 people that live in this neighborhood, and they all have about a 1 in 15 chance of becoming the victim of a crime here. I was reading reviews on the area, and one person actually said that this is one of Baltimore's safest neighborhoods. That was one person. There was about 75 reviews that said it was extremely dangerous. One reply to the person that said it was safe asked if they'd left their basement in 30 years. 90% of the homes here have bars on the windows, and the other 10% are boarded up houses. You look at the architecture of this neighborhood and it looks like at one point it was just a beautiful place to live, and obviously it's not anymore. There's a lot of people there that are just normal, everyday people, just like any neighborhood, but you always have that 10% that are just doing stupid stuff that bring a neighborhood down like this. The violent crime rate in Rosemont is 562% above the national average. That's just the violent crime rate. 6.88 violent crimes happen for every 100,000 residents here. That's compared to the national average, which is 1.04. Number 9, Morrill Park. Morrill Park is southwest of downtown Baltimore. They got about 6,000 residents living in this neighborhood, and I was reading one review that said when they were going up there, there was a whole lot of hobos that would live there in the different vacant lots because the train tracks were not too far away. They're actually on the southern border of this neighborhood. Hobos. Always loved the name hobos. Originally, Morrill Park was part of an area in Baltimore known as Georgia Plantation. Later on, they changed the name to Mount Clair. Morrill Park is a good place to go if you don't feel your body has enough holes in it and you'd like to gather a couple more. The violent crime rate here is 665% higher than the national average. There is 7.96 violent crimes for every 100,000 residents here. Like I said before, that's compared to the national average of 1.04. So basically, you have a 1 in 11 chance of getting some damage done to your body involuntarily here. The unemployment rate in Morrill Park is 85% higher than the national average. Usually when you got a high unemployment rate or severe poverty, you have a lot of violent crime and property crime. Actually, even though there's, a lot of poverty and people don't have jobs, you'd think that would bring on more property crime. But violent crime is the one that always blows up in an area like that. I guess when it comes to property crime, nobody in the neighborhood has anything worth stealing. Number 8, Brooklyn Curtis Bay, Baltimore. Brooklyn Curtis Bay, they're actually two different neighborhoods, but they're right next to each other, and people usually lump this area together because it's kind of on this weird peninsula thing, with Fairfield industrial area right to the east of them. You ever heard the phrase, the perfect storm? This area has the perfect storm for crime. You've got industrial area, a big train yard, you've got housing projects, all the things that usually tell you there's going to be some crime. And Brooklyn Curtis Bay doesn't disappoint. They got some crime. Their violent crime rate is 674% higher than the national average. You have a 1 in 11 chance of being the victim of a crime here. There's only like 13,000 people living in this area. If you're looking for it on the map, it's just south of downtown Baltimore across the water there. Like so many other neighborhoods in Baltimore, every block has a few boarded up houses and a few that look like they should be boarded up. When it comes to violent crime, there are 8.04 for every 100,000 residents. Again, compared to the national average of 1.04. Number 7, Oliver. This one's a little weird because some maps actually show Oliver and Greenmount East are like right on top of each other. There's a Greenmount cemetery right there, but it's weird. The one person I know from Baltimore, I hit them up on Facebook and he said he's heard the Greenmount thing, but he's always known that area as Oliver. Either way, this is a neighborhood that right now has a pretty high violent crime rate, but they're also in the middle of kind of going through a revitalization thing. They've got a lot of new construction going on in this neighborhood, so I think in future episodes, if we do this in a couple of years, they might not make the list. But right now, it's pretty dangerous. If you're looking for it on a map, it is northeast of downtown Baltimore, a little bit north of Johns Hopkins campus. Side note, if you want to get the locals worked up, call it John Hopkins. Oh, they love that. The violent crime rate in Oliver is 678% higher than the national average, and you have a 1 in 11 chance of becoming the victim of a crime here. When it comes to violent crime, there are 8.09 for every 100,000 residents. Number 6, Highlandtown. Highlandtown is just east of downtown Baltimore and just west of Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center. This area is a little strange. It doesn't look terrible when you look at the streets and the different houses. They don't have a ton of boarded up places. I mean, they have some, not a ton, but their violent crime rate's pretty high. It's actually 715% higher than the national average. It's about 12,000 people that live in this neighborhood, and they all have a 1 in 11 chance of becoming the victim of a crime here. But their violent crime rate, you got 8.47 for every 100,000 residents here. Number 5, Berea. If you're from the West Coast, it's called Berea, but here it is called Berea. They have a population of just under 6,000 residents, and they got a lot of violent crime to go along with those 6,000 residents. The violent crime rate in Berea is 718% higher than the national average, and again, this is a place you have a 1 in 11 chance of becoming the victim of crime. That's any crime, not violent crime. Berea is east of Oliver, which we just talked about, and they have a good-sized cemetery in the neighborhood. So that's good because people go there a lot. One thing I like about the Berea area is you could get a home here on average. It's about $120,000 for a 3-bedroom. What I don't like about it is there are 8.5 violent crimes for every 100,000 residents. Again, that's compared to the national average of 1.04. Number 4, Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill sounds delicious. Sounds like a nice place to be, or it sounds like something you get after a nice dinner at a restaurant. But no, Cherry Hill's not a place you want to go. That's because their violent crime rate is 729% higher than the national average. The almost 8,000 people that live here have a 1 in 12 chance becoming the victim of any crime. Oddly, their property crime isn't as high here as some of the other neighborhoods on this list. It's kind of strange. Cherry Hill is east of downtown Baltimore, right across the water there, not too far from the Brooklyn-Curtis Bay area. They have an industrial area to the northwest side of this neighborhood and a lot of public housing. Those are two of the things that always bring in a lot of crime. Now, keep in mind, not every single person in public housing are just total criminals. Don't be under that illusion. I know a lot of people try and push that. It's always that like 5 or 10% that are doing all the crap that make these people that live here, makes their life miserable. It's too bad. I had a friend that grew up in public housing in Southern California, and he said his dad had a great idea. Everyone in the neighborhood knows who the troublemakers are, who the criminals are, whatever. He said they should all be able to vote people out of the community, and then the police just come pick them up. Obviously, you can't do that. That violates a bunch of rights. But when the whole neighborhood knows who's causing all the problems in the neighborhood for a public housing area, I think that should be legal. But in Cherry Hill, there are 8.62 violent crimes for every 100,000 residents. Number 3, Madison East End. Madison East End has about 5,000 residents living here. They have the potential to have a whole lot more, but they have a ton of boarded up homes. Madison East End is east of downtown Baltimore and south of Berea. This neighborhood has a lot of good people, but it also has a whole bunch of street pharmacists applying their trade. If you go here, you have a 1 in 11 chance becoming the victim of a crime. Their violent crime rate is 8.72 for every 100,000 residents. Number 2, Franklin Square, Union Square. This area is more commonly known to the locals, or anyone, as West Baltimore. Now, don't let that confuse you. There's a place on Google Maps that is called West Baltimore, but that's not the West Baltimore most people know. We're talking about Franklin Square, Union Square. This area has around 50,000 residents, and they have a crime rate that is about 751% above the national average. If you live in this area, you have a 1 in 10 chance of being the victim of a crime. There are a lot of other neighborhoods in Baltimore that have worse reputations than places like Franklin Square and Union Square, but the stats don't line up with the reputation. One way I like to gauge how bad a neighborhood is how many homes have bars on the windows and how many homes per block have boarded up homes. This place has a bunch of both. There are 8.76 violent crimes for every 100,000 residents in the Franklin and Union Square area. Keep in mind the national average is 1.04 for every 100,000 residents. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. There is a link down below. All right, on to number 1. And number 1. Hopkins, Middle East. This area is like the poster child for urban decay, so much so that they actually filmed the TV show Homicide: Life on the Streets and HBO's The Wire. They didn't stop with just a television series called Homicide. This neighborhood's so perfect for this type of genre, they actually filmed a movie called Homicide in this area in 1991. If there are any pluses to living in this neighborhood, you're really close to Johns Hopkins, so, I mean, if you get shot or anything like that, you can just go there. You can almost walk there, depending on, obviously, your blood loss at this point. At one point, there was about 12,000 people living in this neighborhood. Right now, there's a little over 7,500. Their violent crime rate is 858% above the national average. You have a 1 in 9 chance of becoming the victim of a crime while in this area. There are 9.96 violent crimes for every 100,000 residents in Hopkins, Middle East. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Like I said, though, the names might be different to the locals. Sorry, but I just want you to be able to find this on the map if you're looking for it and you're thinking about moving that area. Also, there are other neighborhoods that might have worse reputations than the ones on this list. We got to go by the numbers, not reputation. All right, everyone, have a great day. Be nice to each other.